So you always want to clean your brush first. You never know if you really cleaned it all off. Now we're going to go and fill this entire thing in with the dark value, or the first dark value I should call it, I guess. And it's going to be a little bit more red than it has in the past. The picture indicates that that's what's going on here, so that's what we're going to do. It's almost a pinky color on there. Now this is basically just dropping it in, making sure it gets to the edge. I don't have to worry about my highlight because I have it masked off, which is good. I still go over it just in case to make sure I get right up to the edge. That's really the only thing we need to do to this right now. Dry wiping my brush a little bit just to pick up that bubble. Perfect. Okay. And make sure you have your edges there. Good. All right. Now I think I'm going to dry that real quick just because I don't want it to all bleed. There is a little bit of paint there that I want to pick up. There we go. So yeah, I think I need to dry that. So I'm going to dry this off and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I got everything dry and it's cool to the touch, so we're good there. I'm going to put my glaze on that front petal. My water brush. Now with this having been warm recently, it's probably going to take 2 for sure. It's a larger area, number 1, and so you always want to put the first time glaze down twice anyway. Like to get that puddle in the middle and then pull it out to the edges as you go. Looks good. I'm just going to sweep it along. Make sure it goes where I want it to go. Perfect. So I'm going to let that set up for a minute and then we'll add the second glaze. Well worth taking the time to do that. It really, really is. Looks like the sheen's starting to go away, so we can add in this one. Put it in the center first. And then up to the edges. A lot of these edges are masked, but that's okay. It's really good practice to go over them anyway. That looks pretty good. Perfect, actually. So good. We're going to leave that set for a second, and then I'm going to go back to my number 6. I'm going to create one more spot here. I'm going to get rid of some of this in the middle. It's always good to keep your palette cleaned off. You don't have colors mixing by mistake into something else that you don't want. It keeps them nice and bright. And since this is just one color, I'm going to grab my blending and glazing medium here. There we go. Don't have to worry about mixing it in advance. Like I said, it's just one color. Now this is a fairly light top, so I'm going to put that in first because I want that brightness in there with that lemon yellow. You always want to lay your brush down where you want it, either the darkest or the brightest. Since this is such a bright color, that's where I want it. Bring that color right up to the edges. That's important. Okay. Now I'm going to go back into the dark. I just grab some of that yellow and add it to this darker red that I had created. And on this petal, it's much darker in here, and then there's some crevices right in this area. We'll start here. Blue needs to be much darker than that. Now this is not the center of interest, so you don't want it to be really bright and vibrant, but you do want it to be able to stand out. Yeah, right in here. Boy, it's just mixing into that yellow. There it goes. And over in here. And then over in this area. Okay, now this corner in here is nice and dark. I'm going to add it in like that. You want to twirl your brush to a point, especially if you're going to be doing a line. Wow, that just doesn't want to pick it up. Try that one more time here. Push the brush down a little bit harder, I guess. There we go, that's better. Okay, now goes nice and dark right up to there. A bubble there. All right. And this one has a line, and it's darker down here. And then you got some little dark areas over in here that's creating folds. Observation. The more you can observe, the better it's going to be as far as a completed design. This top area is a little darker. This is a little darker. It's going back and deepening those lines. There we go. Now, actually what I want to do is pull out next to those deep lines some highlights. So what I'm doing is I'm cleaning my brush and wiping it so we can pick up a little bit of that yellow. Not much, just enough to make it look like there's a highlight right there. See that? There's a nice bright one right here. And you might have to do this 3, 4, 5 times. Everybody's different with their level of placing the brush down and how much paint you applied to begin with. Or how much water you put on the paper too. It all depends on how you paint, and that's what practice is for. You have to figure that out. Alright, and then there's a brighter light right in here. Now these are secondary lights. The masking are going to be the most important lights, and that's why I like to put them on But it never hurts to do these. It's good practice because sometimes that's the only way you're going to be able to do. You can't use masking fluid for some reason. Get some of those a little bit lighter, get that a little bit lighter. And it just creates that rippled effect on all of those areas. Now there's one spot here right around that masking fluid that's darker. Put that in, and that petal is done. Now right on the edge, and I'm going to do this wet on dry paper of this bulb or bowl or whatever you want to call it down here. I'm just going to put that dark, add a little water to my puddle here. And that's just going to bring it back to this in here a little darker. The orangey yellow effect, which is what we're looking for on this. You want that pink undertone because it's definitely there. So now I'm just going to soften those edges on the inside. Pick up a little bit of color right in here. Alright, that looks good. Must be masking fluid right there. Okay, so I'm going to dry this real quickly. And then we're going to work wet on dry to get the deeper values, especially in the center of interest. We want those in there darker. So I'm going to dry this. I'll be right back with you. Well, I'm back. I got everything nice and dry and cool. So we're going to go ahead before we paint, and this is going to also be, clean my palette off to get this other color out of here, as we won't be using this one now. Wet on dry as well. I pretty much do my darker values wet on dry because it's more controllable. And you can soften it out. You can even remove it if you need to. It's not a biggie. So that has always seemed to work very well for me. Alright. So I'm going to take my mixing brush. And the last value, which is our darkest, is Golden Ochre and Opera Rose are the only two colors. There's no lemon in this one. Just a little bit of water so we get some movement. There we go. And Golden Ochre in here, so it's nice and dark. It's a little bit too pink right now, so we're going to add some more ochre. Almost goes to an orange, but not quite. Probably mixing a lot more than I need, but that's okay. I'm getting the color I want, which is, yeah, that should be good. I always match it up to make sure that it looks right. Now again, this is going to be wet on dry. So I'm picking up the color and making my brush go to a nice little tip. Now this is going to be even less paint on this layer. This is our darkest layer. So there's not a lot of this to go on. But it gives you another value to create form, which is our goal. Just in the deepest, darkest areas and not completely all over. Again, you want all those other values to shine through, which is a good thing. There we go. Now I'm going to clean my brush. Soften any hard lines away. Then our next step, it's always fun, take an eraser and remove the masking fluid on the, we'll leave it on the stems and stuff till we get those painted. This has somewhat of a hard line. It's not a biggie because you really want that nice deep dark value in that corner and you don't necessarily want it out too far. So you don't want to lose your other values. So there, do you see how that shines all those values through there and it's actually creating those little creases and folds in there. Get these little petals up here. We put some masking fluid on that too. So you want to be sure and get it all off. Alright. It's coming off. Alright. Let's see where we're at here once. Not much left here, which is a good thing. It's amazing how much abuse this watercolor paper can take. That looks good. Let's get that line out of there if we can. That's good. Great, I think we're done there. And make sure that you've gotten everything moved off of it so it doesn't get into your paint. And I'm going to grab my eradicator. Thought I had it out, but well, that is. Seem to have one here. Alright, I'm going to go grab one. I'll be right back with you. So I've picked up two. I have a size 8 and a size 4. And all these are is just flat brushes that have a bright or a short bristle to them. So they're not like the long bristled flat brushes. These are, see, this is the same size, the number 8. And you can see the difference in the length of the bristles are quite a bit different. You want to, for the eradicator, you want to use a bright because it's stiffer and you can control it better. So all we're going to do with this, now I cleaned it, wiped off the water, and we're just going to soften the edges into the white that was masked, just to blend it in. Just softens that right in. And then it's not quite so stark. You want to maintain your highlight fairly well, but you don't want it to be stark white. But you want that extra value in there. So you've got your white from the masking, you've got the lemon yellow, then you've got the next layer of lemon yellow and opera rose. So that's 3. Then you've got the lemon yellow, opera rose, and gold ochre, that's 4. And then the darkest color was our gold ochre and opera rose all by itself. So you've got 5 values of color in this painting. And then now that once we get this done, we're going to go ahead and add in some more of the details here. A few more lines on some of the petals that have those. And then we're going to do a lemon wash to bring it all together. We got to do the stamens before that too, but that'll get done. Just soften those in. I clean my brush periodically just to be safe. And the water and the stiff bristles just loosens that color up. Just go after some of these smaller lines. You want to keep your brush up on a point as best as possible. Don't have to continue each and every one of them all the way to the end, because that's not the way they are. You can make some thicker, some thinner, some bend. And like I said, if you don't like them, you can remove them. Now I'm going right through the stamen because that's the way they grow. Alright, so I'm going to leave that. We're going to move on to the next one. And I will wet those so that they all look alike. Now these little petals, they only have a few. In fact, I think it's just this biggest one that has any. So that'll be easy then. Rolling my brush to a point, going up on the tip. Oh, don't have enough color on there. Now this one actually, I left that masking right where I wanted that, and this one actually has lines going right down the sides. So if I think they're too thick, I can, with this having been moistened, I can go back and make them smaller. Sometimes they need to stand out just a little bit more. Okay, those are our two main ones. There we go. Alright, now there's one or two, not many, on this little guy. I do want to put some of this color right in here. It just needs a wash. There we go. Alright, now puddle here, that's what I want. I'm going to just turn this a tad. There we go. And I'm going to start up here. This is going to combine all the colors together. Just unify. Since that wants to tilt that way, we'll do it that way. Okay, so there's our first glaze. Let me grab my water brush. There it is. Gently laying that water on there. Always important, especially with an overglaze like this, to make sure you've got water on the entire petal. There we go. This is just brightening everything up, blending it all together, making it unified. Especially those areas that were masked off with the masking fluid. It's important to get that in there. Make it look unified. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to just twist my painting here so I can get at the next one. Grab my water brush. And just the same process all the way around each petal. And I like to do each petal separately just because I want to make sure that it looks good before I move on to the next one. first thing we want to do is get it wet. Put the water glaze on there. Got a lot of water on the side of that brush, so I don't want to put that on there by mistake. Now the stamen, which are the top part, I believe they call them, is going to be darker, and we'll mix a color for that. We're going to put this color on there first. There's actually two different ones over here, so we'll have to separate that one. And I am using my blending and glazing medium water. Covered up a couple of those stamens and didn't realize it. Now while this is wet, I can see on that one stamen close to the center, I got quite a bit of that gold in there. So what I'm going to do is just take that out, wipe it out of my brush, just to lighten it a little bit there. There we go. This little brush does wonders. Just want to be sure and wipe it in between, otherwise you're just laying the color right back down. You don't want to do that. There we go. That's gone. Clean my brush for next time. And I'm just going to make sure that that is wet. One more time just to be safe. It's such a small area, it'd be hard to miss something, so going back over it won't hurt. As soon as we get this area done, we'll go into the leaves, and then this painting is going to be done. Okay, so I've got that water glaze in there, and we're going to start up here. Oh, it's a good color, like that. Pick up your paint and bring your point to a tip, so you have more control of where the paint's going. Such a small area again. I want to be sure and control it. Now this is our lightest value, so don't be concerned if it's not showing up real well yet. Normal. Gotta get your lights in first. And we're getting there. Okay, first layer is in. I'm going to clean my brush, and I can see I'm going to need more of the golden ochre in this mixture. First thing I want to do is separate these two right here. So I'm just going to, and we're going to go back in and do more detail on this as well, of course. Highlights coming from the upper right, so we're going to, this one is a little different as far as values. It's darker up here, so there's no right left like there is with normal. Where is your highlight coming from? Attitude. This is just dark. Okay, which is odd because it's real close to the highlight. And we're going to just run right down the outside. And that dark that I put in there to separate those two did not hold, which I guess isn't surprising, being the first glaze. And of course these are going to be much darker because it's a much darker color that goes on them. But you do want to get as many values in there as you can. So now, since it didn't want to hold with that yellow lemon in there, I'm just going to do straight golden ochre and see if I can get that to hold in there. One more value. It's going to be real dark. Lot of the golden ochre. And a lot of the Ochre Rose. Ochre Rose, it appears dark as you look at it on your palette, but you know, it's a fairly light color. And of course, every time you add water, it lightens it even more, so you got to keep that in mind as well. Okay, I got my brush fairly well loaded here. And I am going to just stipple the outside of this dark side. It's because I want it to have that next extra value in there. There we go, now it's showing. You don't want to cover up all the other areas. You want those values to show to create form. You don't want these to be flat. You've worked so hard to get your other things with value. You want these to be the same. Now I am going to go ahead and put just a touch of this. Whoops. Too much water on there. I could see it was about ready to drip. And since this really isn't stippled like the other one, we're going to just smooth that in. Get some of that in here to separate these a little bit better so you can see what's going on. There we go. A little bit more color up there. Wherever you need to separate these out so that they make sense to the viewer. So it's going to be lemon yellow. Just a touch of that blue sienna. This is fairly light. But you do want it to be on the green side. You don't want it to be... There we go. So that's our first value. I'm going to add just a little bit more in there. So we've got enough to do all the leaves at once here. Okay. Second value is going to be the same plus more blue sienna. So what I'm just going to do is pull some of this over here. This will be our first dark. That blue just adds such a pretty color here. And then the next two colors that are on your list will be the mid value and the dark. And we'll do those as dry brushing. We just want to get these, make some more paint here, on the first glaze. There we go. Clean out my brush. Get some water on that first Of course, we're going to start on the left and work to the right. I'm right-handed. That'll help me keep my hand out of it. Pick up my blending and glazing medium water. You always want to do the leaf or petal that's behind the other one. Now I do have some masking fluid on here, so it's going to look a little funny. It's going to bead up and that type of thing, but it's going to help us in the long run maintaining those whites. And this will outline your petals on your flower a little bit too better. I think this is as far as we're going to go with the water for right now because it's going to dry otherwise. It's a fairly large area, so I'm picking up my number 6. It's actually a number 6 long round. These have a longer bristle here. That's why they call them long. And they hold a lot more water, which I just love. So, just drop this in. Again, this is our first highlight, our first value, I should say. It's our masking area. Once we take that off, that'll be our white or lightest color. This is just our first wash. And again, it looks a little funny because of the masking fluid, but that's okay. Kind of a yellowy green, and that's what we were shooting for. And don't be concerned if you went over on the outside like I did. It's all going to be covered up by the dark value anyway. There we go. We're getting right to where the water comes to an end here, so we're going to stop and add some more water. See where my masking fluid is. Fill that all in. Oh, looks good. Going to be a real pretty green highlight here. My husband's calling the dog in. They're all still sick. Quite a bit of masking fluid on this one, but that's okay. That's what it's for. Okay, now while that's still wet, I'm going to go ahead and pick up our darker value here. I'm going to drop it in up here first. We'll need to separate these two petals out, so I'm going to put it in over here. Again, wherever you lay your brush down, that's where you're going to have the darkest value. There we go. And And this side is our darkest side, so we're going to put it in over here first. And we are going to want to separate between here and the petal. So as you lay in your water, you want to be very careful you don't get your petal wet, because you don't want it to, the green to go into that petal at all. Boy, this is taking a lot of the paint. I'm going to have to mix more paint for the next one. Imagine you can hear my dog crying. He's the biggest baby we have ever owned. Back, we got everything nice and dry and cooled. Here's my brushes. I'm going to pick up some water and get this one nice and wet with a glaze of water. This is really going to bring everything together, getting these leaves done. It's going to be really lovely. Looks good. All right. Going to add a little bit of water to the mixture here. Yeah, need to be a little bit more green than that. It's better. And again, we got masking fluid on this one as well, so gonna look a little funky till we get that off of there. Picking up a little bit of the fluid on there, it was a little too wet. Okay, let's get our dirt color. There. All right, let's go on and do this bulb, and the bulbs I want to be just a little bit more yellow than the green. Always pull in some of that green color in there. There we go, that should be good. And then we'll use the green color as our dark value. Pick up some water. Not a lot of this one showing, but peeking out there. Pick up our first color. That's about exactly what I was thinking. This is actually a bulb of the daylily flowers, so just hasn't opened up yet. Add in the dark. Okay. Do the same thing for the other one. Yep, a lot more citrusy a color, which I like. Now, since light travels in a straight line, this is actually the light side, the top of this bulb. Picking up some of that extra fluid on top of that masking fluid there. There we go. And don't forget, we're going to have detail and everything else on here. I guess I put that masking fluid on the wrong side, didn't I? That's alright. We can correct that when we take the masking fluid off. There. Now we just got this little area to put in. I actually separate this out because we want to jump that stem underneath there. Okay. Now we're going to go back to the original colors we had. Make this first value a little bit greener. Make sure you get right up to the edge. And see, I got the masking fluid on the wrong edge of this one too. But it is correctable, so we'll do that. Now, let's pick up our dark. We know right up against this stem it's going to be darker. And here, and up here. So we want that to set down. Just darkening that one spot that I had missed a little bit more. Okay. Still is a lot of water right there, so I'm trying to pick it up a little bit. There we go. Needs a little bit more of the yellow value. Okay. I'm going to dry this completely, and then we're going to erase and see where we're really at. So that'll be the trick. So I'm going to be right back with you. Okay, I got everything nice and dry. It's time to erase. I'm going to turn this on its side because we're going to be doing some detail anyway. Now this is going to remove the masking fluid too, so we can see where we're at with that. And what we need to do or not do. This is removing the pencil lines and the masking fluid. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to do it off camera so you don't have to get bored watching me do this. I'll be right back. Okay. What I've done is I've erased everything, took all the masking fluid off, and then I went on all of these over here and softened in with my eradicator the highlights. Now I left this one here so you can watch me. I didn't want you to get bored to tears watching me do all of those leaves. So what I'm going to do here, just show you how I did it. Now these leaves grow up and down, so you want to be able to move your arm back and forth this way, so that's why I moved the painting so I could get at that. Now we want this soft around these edges so it doesn't look quite so harsh against the rest of the leaf. And we still have our detail to put in here, and we might do a glaze wash at the end. So now this outside edge here that's coming over, I'm going to leave that because that's what I want. I want that nice highlighted edge there. And if I find that it looks a little bit harsh, that's what the detail is for. Again, whenever there's something that you're not liking about your painting and you're not quite sure what it is, look at your highlights and look at your dark values. I didn't like that line being there, so I'm just softening that away. Get some color up here. More than likely, if there's something wrong and you're not quite sure what it is, you need a dark value added somewhere. You'll find that that will make it look realistic. Softening that edge against that background. My husband's working on the outside of the house, so I apologize for the noise. Alright. Not even quite sure what he's doing. I'm not quite sure I want to know. Alright, so that part of it's pretty good. I want to get this part a little bit softer here too. See, just by sometimes just adding water and a little tiny bit of pressure. It may look like I'm really putting a lot of pressure on this. I am not. Just softening that edge of that water. Okay, so now let's just grab that edge, lay your brush down, give that edge a place to go with the water that you're adding to it. Little tiny details that make such a difference. Getting more water on my brush, it was pretty dry. And we can start putting in some detail on these buds too. And we want this to separate from soften that in. See what a difference that just that little bit of detail makes? There we go. Separate out that okay. Do some more detail in this big one here. First place we want it nice and dark is right up here. And all these little crevices. Don't want to do too many at one time or you won't get back to it to soften it fast enough. So you want to be cautious about that. gonna move the paint where you want it. And again, this is just our first dark. And you can see me moving my brush up and down that way because that's the way this grows. And I'm just running my brush across the edge of that puddle, leaving the dark on the inside, that's what you want, but pulling out the outside. And smoothing everything out so it looks good. Now, we do need to put a dark line on that outside. Whoop, I just put that up with my clean brush instead of my little one. Again, we want this edge to curve back. There we go. Dark makes things recede, light makes them come forward. Okay, what I've gone ahead and done, so you don't get bored to tears watching me, is I added the next layer of detail on each of these. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just add, and we'll have you watch me do this last leaf. I'm going to put some lines in there, growth lines. And I like to wet the surface first, because then if I don't like the lines, I can remove them. So the most important thing is to make sure you have no bubble and to bring your tip right up on top. Since this one kind of separates in the middle, I had too much water in there, so that one made it thicker. So we'll just correct that. Let that dry a little bit. I had that pretty wet. And then right up on the tip and right up. And now your line's going to be the same. No, and they're not the same when they grow in real life either. So if they're not all exactly the same, not a biggie. There. Got that one pretty wet, it wasn't picking it up. Alright. Now I'm going to just take a look here and see, do I need any more anywhere? Do I need to fix them anywhere? Picking up that last dark value and adding these in. Just didn't want to get this one going. There we go. That's better. softening them in where it needs it. So there. Now I was going to do a wash of color on top of this, but I don't believe that I'm going to. So I like the leaves the way they are and the stems. I did put a little blush of a yellow on these two buds so that you can see that they're not the same color as the leaves. But we're going to call this done. Let's go ahead and sign it. I'm going to just pick up some of the yellowing color. Now normally I would put it right here, but that's my dark side, so I'm going to bring that to a tip and make sure I have no water drops on my brush. Need more water in that mix. There we go. That looks better. And again, I practice my signature so you get it all the same. There we go. Maybe you need to fix some of it, fix some of it. Alright, so we are calling this done. I would say it's pretty close. I actually like mine a little bit better. It's a little bit brighter. So we will see you next time. I will be doing a 3 bud painting with a butterfly on top. It's a black butterfly with a, I would say, kind of a blue-green accent on the butterfly sitting on top of a red-orange bud. And then there's going to be a red bud and a yellow-orange bud as well. So we're going to have an analogous split complementary color scheme on that one. So keep an eye out for that one. But thank you so much for watching me as a patron. I sincerely appreciate that. Please do not hesitate to follow me on YouTube and like my paintings over there. So I appreciate your patronage. See you next time.